Okay, so from what I read, this is actually the quote-unquote hidden ending, and you are supposed to just link the fire. So if I read it right, we should get like the secret ending. I don't know if it's good or bad, but basically to do this ending, supposedly, and before I get it started here, and just to drag this out just a little bit further, you have to basically do all that stuff with what's her face, your wife, whatever. Go through with the marriage thing, and if you've done the marriage thing, as far as I can tell, at that point, when you link the fire, it automatically will do this ending. So let's see. I like how it asked you this time, because in Dark Souls 1, you just do it. We'll see. I have a bad feeling it's gonna like screw up. I was like, that better not be it. Ooh. Hey, you got a sister. What's up? Make us whole with a departing crotch shot. So we did get it. Nice. All right. Oof. I actually finished it a little sooner than I thought. I thought it was going to take it till the weekend. But all right. So now is where I typically will talk about the game, give kind of an off-the-cuff mini review of what I thought. And apparently we missed an entire area called Archer Dragon Peak. I don't think we ever actually made it there. So that's kind of a pisser. But I definitely was not about to go back, because mentally I was done with the game at this point. So I wasn't about to go, you know what, hold on, let's go do this other area. So anyway, yeah, what I thought about the game. Overall, it was really good. I feel like, and this is going to piss a lot of people off, from fanboys, you know who they are. I'm glad this is their last Dark Souls, because I feel like we're starting to just kind of see the same thing over and over again. The same kind of, again, I keep calling them tropes, Things like, oh, there's an enemy down the hallway standing with their back to you, or, you know, by themselves to trick you to run down, and oh, there's enemies to the side, or you walk through a room, or you walk through a door. Wow, that's really loud. I'm gonna take my headphones off. But yeah, you walk into a room and to the side is an enemy, or just tons of little stuff like that. Like you see it over and over and over again. And by now, if you've played the other Dark Souls, you're probably not going to fall for that, right? Because you know they designed the game like that on purpose. Like, oh, Crystal Lizard, I'm going to attack him and he's going to run off. And oh, look, he just happened to run into some enemies who were standing there with their weapons ready. So that stuff is getting really, like, tired. It feels like they run out of ideas for things like that. And it also feels like with this game, I really feel like they've got a reputation for making difficult games. And instead of just designing the game the way they want and letting the difficulty come from just organic design, they're like, how can we make difficult? How can we make this game harder? How can we make this fight tough? How can we make this hard? Instead of how can we make this interesting, or how can we design this in a way that it's not too easy, but it's, you know, challenging. I feel like now they have the impression, oh, we've got to one up. We've got this expectation that the game's hard and we have to do that. Which ended up in a lot of like really tedious, dumb shit. Like those enemies that just lowered your max health just by staring at you. Just dumb stuff like that. The bosses, honestly, I'd have to relook at the Dark Souls 2 bosses, but this might be the worst From game I've played, and I've played Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3, and Bloodborne. As far as bosses go, the bosses felt fairly uninspired and just tedious, either just boring or tedious, or a little bit of both. They just weren't, in most part, they just weren't interesting. I really like Bloodborne's bosses a lot, visually, and just the way they attack. Dark Souls 1 bosses I thought were good. Dark Souls 2, however, had the problem where like almost every boss fight had ads. Like they really relied on ads in Dark Souls 2. That was like the gimmick for Dark Souls 2 bosses. The gimmick in Dark Souls 3 is every single boss does something at half health. And then at the end, you've got 2 bosses in a row you have to kill twice, which is not fun to do at all. It's just there's something really anti-motivating, really, I don't want to say disheartening, but just kind of like about having a boss that you've got to bring their health all the way down and then bring it all the way down again. It's not fun. It's just really tedious. But speaking of cast here, as usual, the voice acting and just the voices in general are superb. Like there's something about the way they handle the way NPCs speak, other than that really dumb laugh thing that they do, which is another trope, is just really, it really gives them character. It makes them resonate really well with you. It's just, again, there's just something, and I don't know what it is, that they do with the way the voice actors talk, or the way just the way their voices sound, that make it distinctly Dark Souls, to make it distinctly a From game. And I like that a lot. I really like the various characters in the game, and they do a good job of, you can tell kind of what a character is like by the way they speak. And even just a few lines, you can kind of get attached to somebody just from the words they choose and the way that they speak, which has always been really interesting. Visually, the game looked great. A lot of the locations look phenomenal. That was one problem I had with Bloodborne, is that I love the look of the main area, but it felt like half the game looked like that. There wasn't a whole lot of variety. This game had a ton of variety in the way in areas. Visually, it was, again, phenomenal looking, without question. Level design, again, they knock it out of the park with level design. Nobody really does level design like From. The way like you're trotting along, you're busting through the dungeon, it feels like you're so far away from the bonfire, and all of a sudden you unlock like a shortcut, and oh, I'm right back at the bonfire, I circled around. That really makes the area feel a little bit more realistic. Obviously, some areas like where you're running around the roofs, that's obviously pretty handcrafted, not logically made. Like nobody would ever build places like that. But that's fine. You can look past that. But apart from that, it makes the world feel more connected. Again, especially not only the way areas kind of double back on themselves, or you can see where you've been in short term, you can also see like far out, like, you know, oh, I was there like 10 hours ago. I can see that area. Or seeing an area and then a couple hours later going, oh yeah, this is the area I saw from like way back in the newbie area. That kind of stuff is really, really cool. And again, they do a phenomenal job of things like that. So since we're getting kind of to the end of the credits, I'll say this. I think it was a good game. I think it was a really good game for the most part. Begin Journey 2 in current state. Journey 2 can be initiated from the Shrine Bar if you don't wish to begin now. Let's go ahead and say no. Because if there's DLC, I don't want to start it on New Game Plus. Journey can be initiated from... Okay. Cool. I'm so glad they did that. Dark Souls 1 and Bloodborne both kicked you into New Game Plus, which was kind of shitty. And I'm really glad they did not do that. Oh, this is what the parry looks like, by the way. I totally forgot to really show that off. Because you can parry magic with it. But overall, like I said, I thought it was a really good game. I think it's probably this... If I had to rate the From games, Dark Souls... I've not played Demon Souls. Dark Souls 2 would definitely be last. Bloodborne would probably be first. This game and Dark Souls 1 would be pretty close. If I had to pick one, because I like this game because it's got some newer features that have been added, some kind of quality of life type things that are nice. But generally speaking, I like Dark Souls 1 better, I think, just because, again, I feel like the game was just organically difficult. Like, they didn't go into, and they've even said in interviews, they didn't really go into it trying to make, sorry, my cat's all messing around here as I wrap up. They didn't really go in and try to make the game difficult. They just kind of designed it what they wanted, and it was sort of difficult the way they designed it, which I think it feels that way. And this, again, in this game, I feel like they went in and said, we've got to make this hard. And, well, okay, how can we make this hard? Instead of, how can we make this fun? Or how can we make this, like, realistic or what have you? And it felt like, again, it feels like it really shows. And parts that were, quote-unquote, difficult felt difficult because they were designed to be that way and ended up just being more tedious than anything. There wasn't a ton of that in the game. And there are some things they really need to stop with, like the stupid ass swamp levels with like the toxic swamp. Like that was old. That got old in Dark Souls 1. We didn't need it like 2 more times, or 3 more times rather, for Dark Souls 2, Bloodborne, and now Dark Souls 3. Please, for the love of God, stop doing that. Those are some of the worst areas in all of the games are always the toxic swamp areas. But overall, I enjoyed it. Glad I played it. I was definitely getting kind of ready to finish by the end. So I feel like it didn't overstay its welcome. I felt like right around the time I was like, okay, this kind of needs to end now. It actually did end. And especially since we actually missed at least one whole area, apparently. But yeah, as far as a score goes, I usually scale 1 to 10. 10 is like perfect game. Like, or as close to perfect as you can get. Where 5 is mediocre. It's got about as much good things as it does bad things. I give this game 7.7 or 7.5. One of those two. Again, it was really good. It was really fun. There were too many areas that were just kind of tedious to get through, though, that were not enjoyable to bring it up to an 8. But at least a solid 7. And again, keep in mind, my 7 is not the IGN 7, where a game is like, oh, this game is boring and not that interesting. 7, right? So it's actually quite good still. But as far as the price, what I would suggest for this is a price. If you're a Dark Souls fan, you already have this game. But on the off chance you're somehow a Dark Souls fan and don't own it, I would definitely say like $50, because especially if you're the type who's going to do multiple playthroughs, either on New Game Plus or like different builds. That's one thing that I think is great about Dark Souls, is if you're the type of person who wants to do things in multiple, and I swear to God, I'm going to shut the hell up here in a minute. But if you're the type of person who wants to really dig into the game, try different builds, do New Game Plus, New Game Plus Plus, New Game Plus Plus Plus, like, this game is great for that. I found so many weapons that I wanted to mess with. I just didn't have time or the souls to really upgrade them and fiddle with. And that's one of the great things about Dark Souls in general, is like a lot of different weapon types that you go with. Armor didn't really matter that much in this one. Once you hit like 23, 24 damage absorption, like way heavier armor wasn't adding very much at all. So in armor, it feels like you're much less, or you're much more limited. But weapons, there's a lot of choices there, and a lot of, not all of them, but a lot of them do feel viable to mess around with. So if you're the type to do that, absolutely full price, $60, no questions asked. Definitely full price. If you're just going to play through it once, maybe play the DLCs later on, I would say, 40 to 50, because again, I got a ton of hours out of this. What are we at? Now, granted, there was some time where I was AFK and stuff, but what are we at? 82 hours. I'd say that's probably more like 70 to 72. Still, ton of gameplay in this, and most of it was really good. And if you haven't got it, some people ask me, like, okay, if I've never played Dark Souls, should I get this one? Honestly, no. My advice to you is, if you've never played a Dark Souls game, get the first game first. Keep in mind, it's a little bit more obscure as far as like, okay, where do I go now? So don't feel bad about looking up where do you want to go. I mean, obviously it can be more fun finding it out yourself. but it's a little bit more obscure as far as sometimes you're just kind of like, I don't even know where to go now. It doesn't happen a lot though. Don't let that scare you off. It doesn't. It happens like maybe 2, maybe 3 times in the game tops. But I think it's held up really well, and I absolutely think if you've never played a Dark Souls game, I definitely would suggest playing it. Probably skip number 2. This is not to say Dark Souls 2 is bad. The beginning of Dark Souls 2 is complete trash. Like the first 2 to 3 hours is just garbage, and it's just not fun at all. The rest of the game picks up after that, but even then, there's so many issues with like weapon degradation if you're on PC, which I think they finally fixed after several years, and shit like that. But I would say probably skip 2 and then play Bloodborne if you got a PS4, or just skip to Dark Souls 3 if you do not. Bloodborne, I highly suggest you play as well. The combat's better generally. The dodging and stuff is better done. It's more active combat. It's almost like this game took the enemies from Bloodborne, allowing them to attack really quick and recover really quick, but then you still attack as slow as you did from Dark Souls 1, which is, kind of, like I say, a little bit tedious sometimes when it's like, oh, I get 1 attack in. If I take 2, I'll get hit. So it's like slowly chipping away at the boss gets super old. But yeah, play the first game and then play this one, in my opinion. If you're going to play Dark Souls 3 first, and it's your first Dark Souls game, pick Knight. Knight is going to be a lot easier than the other classes. Anyway, I think I have rambled on and on enough. Thanks again to Gage for your continued support on Patreon. You get to be the last person for this playthrough. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Again, make sure you leave the comments. If you went through this entire playthrough, I definitely want to hear from you in the comments below. Kudos to those who did, because this was a very long playthrough, and I know I can do some boring shit sometimes. But anyway, thank you for watching. Follow me on Twitter, and I will see you next time.